Hello, to quickly introduce myself, my name is Andyz, and my accounting firm primarily works with law firms and their trust accounting. This presentation will focus on trust accounting for personal injury law firms. Like the subtitle says, the importance of trust accounting cannot be overstated. It is crucial to have your trust account reconciled and balanced by clients. This here is the table of contents that you can reference back to at any time. This gives you a broad sense of all the steps, starting with the settlement deposit all the way to recording your firm's fees. All right, so let's kick it off with step number one. When you receive the settlement deposit, it is extremely important that we make that deposit into your trust bank account and not your savings or your checking business account. All right, and then also note that a check or an ACH can take 2 to 3 business days to clear. So we want to make sure that it hits your bank account before we move forward with entering anything into an accounting software. All right. Once it is confirmed that that money has hit your bank account, the deposit has hit the bank trust account, now we could go ahead and make the deposit into your accounting software. So first thing is extremely important is that we want to use the trust bank account in your software. Then equally important, we must have a trust liability account that moves in tandem with the trust bank account. In accounting, every debit has a credit and every credit has a debit. So here, the bank account is an asset on your balance sheet, and the trust liability is a liability on your balance sheet. And those will always move in tandem, and they'll always equate to one another, right? Because that asset isn't truly your business's asset, nor is the liability. Then every software will have a field for the client. So we want to make sure that every transaction that we do during the deposit and disbursement process has the client associated with that transaction. Then you could input a description in the memo line. For instance, maybe the client's name and the case number. And then lastly, we do want to put the true settlement amount, whatever was agreed upon. Once you've recorded that deposit into your accounting software, now it's time to gather all your support for your disbursements. I have an example of 5 here, but it is not limited to these 5. First is the attorney fee disbursement sheet. Here it'll give you a breakout of the attorney fees, any client expenses that might be getting reimbursed, and any referring attorneys that might be on the case. Second is a simple settlement sheet. The total settlement minus the attorney fees, minus any expenses, minus the liens, loans, and then net to client. And in this example, I'm going to be using Michael Scott as the client. Third is the client expenses. This will be a summary sheet of all the client expenses that incurred during the case that we're getting reimbursed for now. Fourth is a lien summary sheet. If you have multiple liens that we're paying out, it's nice to have a summary of those liens. And then fifth is the actual lien support, right? So this is something that you would get from from the hospital, from a specialist like a physical therapist. All right, so this is an example of some of the supporting documents that you will want for the disbursement process. Okay, so you've gathered all your support for the disbursements. So now it's time to actually enter the disbursements into your accounting software, either with a check or an e-payment. Okay, so using that same example of Michael Scott, the $50,000 deposit, settlement deposit, now we need $50,000 worth of disbursements, no less or no more. Okay, so let's go through some of the fields that I believe are extremely important to fill out for a good disbursement process. All right, so number one is we want to have the right pay to the order of, right? So here's Michael Scott. Number two is choosing that trust bank account, right? So money leaving out the trust bank account. Number three is that trust liability account that moves in tandem with the bank account, right? So this is debiting that liability, reducing that liability. Number four is the customer field. Every accounting software should have something very similar. All right, so in this case, Michael Scott. But let's say if this was to one of the physicians, okay, then here would be the pay to the order of the physician, but here it would still be Michael Scott as the customer. All right, and then number five is a memo. Here, simply we put settlement check, but if it's a lien, you could put paid in full, maybe the client's name, and then paid in full. And then number 6 is the correct dollar amount that's getting paid out to the client or the lien holder or what have you. Okay, so those are all the steps that you want to take when making a disbursement. You've recorded all the disbursements in your accounting software. Now, as a good rule of thumb, you want to have a report that shows that that client is balanced to zero. Okay, so this is a custom report you could build within QuickBooks, but again, most accounting softwares should have something very similar to this. All right, so again, in this example, we're using Michael Scott. And so this report is really nice because you could run it by client. So we see the $50,000 deposit, and now we see $50,000 worth of disbursements balancing this client to zero. Okay, but again, let's say if there was a negative $10 balance or a positive $10 balance, now you know that we went wrong somewhere, and this allows you to investigate where the issue lies. All right, so maybe you owe now $10 more or less to the client, something, the math got messed up, or something got fat fingered. All right, so again, this is a great report to help you confirm that that client is balanced to zero. You have confirmed that your deposit matches all your disbursements. So now it's time to actually make the physical payments, either with a check or an e-payment. What I like to do is send the support with the check, or if it's an e-payment, you could email it to them. Next is we need to transfer the attorney fees, right? Your firm's fees and the client expenses that you're getting reimbursed. No need to issue yourself a check. Most banks will allow you to transfer from the trust account to your checking account. But what I like to do is I like to have a report that shows me what I'm transferring by client. All right, and so here we have an example of a report, a custom report you could build within QuickBooks. But again, majority of all softwares have this functionality. All right, so then now you should have some check and balances in place, right? Your bookkeeper account shouldn't be making the transfer in the bank account. So what I like to do is have this report sent to a partner or the owner within the firm or a manager within the firm, and then that manager will make the transfer of the $11,444.44. Once you've made that transfer from your trust to your checking account, now it's time to record that income and reimbursement of client expenses in your accounting software. Okay, so again, I'm going to use the example of QuickBooks, but all accounting softwares are very similar in functionality. All right, so number one is we want to make sure we record it. We choose the business checking account number that's getting deposited into. So debiting the cash into what business checking account. Number two, like mentioned, all accounting softwares will have a field for the client. So we want to associate the client with this deposit. And in this case, it's Michael Scott. Number three is choosing the account, right? So here we have income. So we have an income account, but then also a client expense account. When you have client expenses, the proper way of recording them is an asset on your balance sheet, right? It's not your firm's expense. So it sits as an asset in anticipation that you will one day get it back. And when you do, this is the offset against that asset. Number four is you want to have a memo. So here we have Michael Scott attorney fees, then Michael Scott expense reimbursements. Then here we do have some extra fields. The more fields you fill out, the better. So here we have a check number. In this case, it's an EFT. Then what kind of payment method. Here it's a transfer. But then number five, we want to make sure we have the right amount, right? So that does this equate to the transfer? And then is it broken out properly by what the firm fees are to how many to the client expenses that were reimbursed? All right, so this does wrap up the presentation. Please, if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to me. I will be providing you with my email address and my cell number. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the presentation, and the best of luck with everything, and be blessed.